this is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
Nobody can successfully fight the personal battles from within. While the solitude is often comfortable, it is frequently without benefit. The chaos of the mind requires support in moments when its structure is failing. Once we break through the darkness and the light at the end begins to shine, we approach our support system with gratitude, knowing that it is by their grace that we were able to move forward, ultimately realizing that there is a cost and a debit to the assistance that was provided in times of need. The payment plans are not reimbursement, but rather paying forward, knowing that the help you give from the experience you had holds a value beyond measure. Playing a part in recovery and restoration is the most noble way to show gratitude. I'm Kevin Donaldson, always here with Mike Felice, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. If you're a fan of overcoming suffering and overcoming adversity, then we're for you, because that's what we do here, and that's the stories that we highlight. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, please comment. You can ring the bell to get notified of all of our new content, and now you can join. And of course, follow us on all social media so you can find out what we're up to. On this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we have a returning guest from all the way back from episode 128. That's Nick Ricciotti. And tonight we're going to talk about the suffering of peer support, because your life could have gone one way, but you chose to take it and start a new mission, which is kind of what this show's all about. Thanks for coming in again, Nick.
Kevin, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited.
Before we get into anything, let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody as retired police, and we certainly don't trust anybody as podcasters, but we do trust the boys at Toyota of Hackensack. So go to toyotahackensack.com and let them find you a car. The more things change, the more they stay the same. We still start out with a social media question, and this one comes from Riri27. What do you hope your legacy will be? Now, for you in particular, and we'll get into a short recap of your previous episode.
Right.
It could have gone down a really bad road, but you chose to take it a different way. So if you had a crystal ball and you could foretell the future, what do you think you would want your legacy to be?
I think I want my legacy to be that things can get better if you put the work in. Like, I want to be remembered as somebody who could have stayed down, who could have turned right and went down a really bad path, but made a conscious decision to say, you know what, I'm going to flip this negative experience. I'm going to make the best of it and watch me make a comeback. That's what I want my legacy to be.
I recently had it put this way. A young kid told his father, they were in class and they're asking the kids what they feel like, what object they feel like. One girl says a peach, one girl says a pineapple, one girl says a piece of paper. And this kid goes, told the teacher, I feel like some toilet paper. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he goes, sometimes I'm on a roll and sometimes I'm taking shit.
Yep.
And that's the way I see your story. And I watch what you're doing on social media, and you're taking your bad beat and you're taking it further and you're using it. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. The comeback is greater than the setback.
We all love a comeback. Any Rocky fans out there love a comeback.
Yep.
I just want to be known as somebody who tried their best. In everything that I do, I tried my best. Whether it's trying to reach out to somebody in need, I tried my best. Whether I tried to get out a piece of information, I tried my best. Whether it's how I raised my kids, I tried my best. I do not strive for perfection. Because perfection is it's an immeasurable goal.
Yeah.
But what I try to do is I try to put my best foot forward on everything that I do. I put my whole heart into it, and you're never going to get anything half-assed. You know, it's the great Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
He says, never do one thing half-assed, or never do 10 things half-assed. Do one thing whole-assed. And that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to put my best foot forward, and I just want to be known. You know what? Kevin wasn't perfect. Kevin had a lot of faults, but Kevin did his best. And I think that's all we can ask for from anybody.
I agree. And I think if you have something that you're passionate about, you dive in, you give it 100%, you give it your all. That way you have no regret at the end.
Right. You never want to leave that on the table. God, the woulda, coulda, shouldas. We were talking about that off air with Mike. The woulda, coulda, shouldas. You know, I have that implicit guilt in me, and it's not a good feeling.
No.
It's not a good feeling, but I will never anesthetize it. I will never run away from it. I will always own it.
Best thing to do.
So Riri27, thank you for sending that question in. Keep sending in your questions, and we will try to get them on the air. So we're talking, you came in 128, that's a year and a half ago.
Give or take.
Almost 2 years ago. And you went through a really, really rough time. You went through every cop's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't you give our audience a little recap into your story?
Sure. So the quick synopsis is I was a cop in 2014 is when I got hired. I started in corrections. I eventually worked my way to getting certified, went through the police academy, and I ended up getting hired by the sheriff's office as a sheriff's officer in 2016. So I did my career there. I eventually ended up losing my job to substance abuse in 2020. So there came a point in my career and just my personal life where I just wasn't happy with how things were going. And I found ways to cope with a guy named Jameson, if you guys understand what I'm saying. So it just started out as like, what do I do after work because I don't want to go home? My wife, who is now my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time. She was working down in Philadelphia. Didn't want to go home to an empty house. So what do? You go out, you go to a bar, and who do you drink with?
You drank with other cops.
You drink with other cops. And that's what I did. And I didn't even realize it at the time that I was just unhappy. I thought that this is what cops do because I was embedded in the cop culture.
Well, that's what it becomes, a culture.
Yeah.
You know, since your episode, and I'll let you in on this,
Yep.
I've met some people who worked with you. All right. And I said, oh, I know Nick Ricciotti. And I always get the look. I always get the look like this. And I said, yeah, Nick had a problem. You worked with him, right? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, did you ever? The one guy in particular, because I had jury duty. Right?
Okay.
I had jury duty. And there was one there. And he looks at me and I said, yeah, he had some hard times. Did you ever check on him to make sure he was okay? And you saw the light bulb go off in his head. And you're like, no, I never did. Because when somebody goes down a dark path and they're drinking too much, you know they're drinking too much. Did you ever ask why they're drinking too much?
If you were a cop and I was working with you, and this is not to throw shade at anybody, if you didn't know that I had a drinking problem, you have no business having a badge and a gun because your ability to read people is awful. And that's like one of the biggest things cops have to do, right? There were red flags everywhere in my drinking. And to add to the drinking, I was doing painkillers. You know, I found out that quickly. The guys that I was going out with who were other cops, they were wrapped up doing cocaine. And I found this out because nobody has to go to the bathroom as often as some of my friends were doing when you go out drinking, right? So you start putting two and two together. You start realizing that there are some similarities that you guys are doing other than drinking. But my painkiller use, I don't want to say it wasn't a problem because, look, I was doing painkillers. It was a problem, yes. But the why behind them was a little bit different. I was fueled off of adrenaline from going through the process of getting painkillers. I was coping with my life with alcohol, and I was getting a high from the adrenaline that I wasn't getting from work. Part of the reason why I got into the field of law enforcement is because I wanted a very exciting career. Like, I had aspirations to be SWAT. I wanted to do CERT in the county. I wanted gangs. I wanted drugs. I wanted all like these high risk things. I wasn't getting that at work.
You're a new sheriff's officer is usually stuck in courts.
That's exactly where I was. And this is when things started to go downhill for me. Like, I felt like I didn't have a purpose. I had no passions at the time, which led to alcohol.
So do you think if you were to put out on the road doing one of those specialized units, do you think it would have curbed your alcohol?
No, because by the time I got into one of those specialized units that I wanted, I was already too far in. Yeah. I already had the relationship with the guys who I was going out with where I couldn't get away from them. Like, I knew what I was doing was wrong. Like, I'm not stupid, right? But I just couldn't pull myself away.
It's the allure of comfort.
Yeah.
It is. It's you know, I know this is scary over here and this is going to be painful and this is going to hurt, but, you know, this isn't a problem. It's not a problem until it's a problem.
Exactly. And when it became a problem for me, it became a very big problem. Because, look, there were signs leading up to ultimately when I ended up getting suspended. I had gotten jammed up off duty a few times. I was usually able to get, away with it. But
I remember there was one incident where your mouth almost got you in some serious, serious trouble.
Yeah. So I was out at a bar and I legitimately blacked out. And when I came to, I was on one of my friend's couches. And I still to this day don't remember what happened, but I was able to get a recap from an IA that I was involved in because the incident was so bad. Because I essentially tried to fight like a whole night squad of cops. And when they were reading off what I was saying to them, I shut down because I didn't want to hear what I was actually saying. Like, it was that bad. I ended up getting an IA for that. And I remember thinking, because I got suspended, I got my gun taken away. When they took my gun, I remember thinking, this is the worst feeling ever. I don't want to ever do anything again or jeopardize having my gun taken away. When I came back from suspension, about a month later, my gun got taken away and I never got it back.
So when you get people don't realize that when you get your gun taken away as a male police officer, it is one of the most emasculating. I've said this before in open conversation. It's like getting your dick chopped off.
Yeah.
And I know everything wrong with that comment. I get it, but it's 100% true.
Yeah.
Because there was something I got jammed up with very early on in my career, and I got my gun taken away, and the word gets around. Oh, he's on the rubber gun squad, and you're sitting on the desk or you're inside. They know you don't have a weapon, and now, it's a horrible feeling.
Yeah, it was not good.
You feel like all the spotlights are on you.
Oh yeah,
and to some extent you are, because people are talking.
Absolutely, and lo and behold, about a month later, I get called into the sheriff's office and I get my gun taken away for good. And they're like, "You're under investigation by the prosecutor's office. Give us your stuff. We'll be in touch." And I never got my gun back. I ended up ultimately pleading guilty to a third-degree conspiracy to possess. I take a plea. I get sentenced, charged everything. And that was the end of my career right there.
Now, because you took a plea, what's your conviction?
So I have a third-degree conspiracy to possess CDS. They wouldn't downgrade it. They wouldn't give me PTI unless I had to essentially snitch on some other people. And I didn't want to do that. So I just took the plea. I'm a felon, technically. Mm-hmm. And it is what it is. I took a probation sentence. I pleaded guilty to 3 years. The judge gave me 2 because my involvement was like less than some other people. And that was it.
No time.
No time. I never went to jail. I was never actually in cuffs. Like, I'll give it to the prosecutor's office. Like, they did it the right way. They didn't knock on my door and arrest me. Like, everything was through our attorneys. Hey, show up here, do this, do that. I did what they asked me to do. For what it was worth, I'll give them that. Like, they didn't embarrass me.
Right. But that's, I mean, they could have done it the other way.
They could have just showed up at my door and put me in handcuffs. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then you got to deal with it. Now, what's the long-term ramifications of you being a felon?
Right now, knock on wood, there hasn't been. The biggest ramification that honestly kind of irks me, I can't have a gun, to be honest. Like, okay. I can't own a gun.
Well, can you possibly go for an expungement later on in life?
So after 5 years post-conviction, which is once I was done with probation, which is about coming up on 2025 will be 3 years. Once 5 years is in, I can apply for expungement, have it wiped off of my record for good. There's 2 reasons why I want to do that. Number 1, I do want to own a gun. Number 2, my oldest has the same exact name as me and the same like initials, NJR. Mm. I don't want this ever to pop up on any type of record release for him, God forbid. That is like the main reason why I want expungement. In terms of like what I do professionally now and like that kind of stuff, it has 0 ramifications.
Well, you can't vote, right?
No, I can vote.
You can vote.
Oh, yeah.
I thought felons couldn't vote.
No, I can vote.
Yeah. For some, I don't know why I think that.
I used to think that too. And then I looked into it. I vote.
Okay.
I mean, I think.
Well, so the funny thing about you and moving forward in your, well, listen, even if you can't, you voted. So, and the great thing about you is moving forward is you could have had such a negative perception of law enforcement. You could have really looked at law enforcement as the enemy, as somebody that took your livelihood away, but you chose to take it in a different direction. You leaned into law enforcement.
Yeah.
Does it have to do with the way you were treated? You said you were treated fairly well.
I was treated fairly well in the fact that like how I was like quote unquote arrested. What was released to the public is different. But how I was treated in terms of like just getting arrested, getting printed, all that stuff, that was fine. What really did it, I was actually with one of my buddies the other day. And we were talking about the moment where I told him what was going on. And in this conversation that I had with him, I owned every bit of my crap. Like I owned everything. I didn't put it off on anybody. It wasn't anybody's fault but my own. So for me to be mad at anybody else but myself, it's not fair. Right. You know, like I made every single decision. Nobody put a gun to my head. Nobody made me do anything. It was all on me. So why am I going to go ahead and get mad at other people when
It's just weight that you got to carry around?
It is, but then there's the other side of like, well, hold up. Everybody knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
Why didn't anybody say anything?
Well, that's that interaction I had with that sheriff's officer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now like a light bulb goes on in my head because this eventually like ticks me off, you know, as I start to process the whole thing. I'm like, why didn't anybody say anything? I was in admin's office multiple times. They never asked me to go for help. They just yelled at me. They screamed at me. Like, what's the problem here? And this makes a light bulb go off in my head. And I'm like, maybe it's because nobody talks about this enough.
And you're in a real position now to change that paradigm.
That's the goal.
That's so what other officers should have been doing with you in your darkest of times is now you actually have that real power to do it.
Yeah.
So it's a taste of irony.
Yeah. And it's like, it's a tough conversation to have. I get it. But this is what I tell people when I go and speak at departments or I do trainings or whatnot. If you think a guy has a problem, he's got a problem.
Yeah.
Right? What do you think is worse? Do you think it's worse to have that hard conversation with a guy? Or do you think it's worse to let it go under the rug? And when shit hits the fan and everybody's like, oh my God, I can't believe what happened. You're just going to turn around and internally you should be like, I knew.
Yeah.
I could have done something. Why didn't I do something?
Now all of a sudden you should, a humane person should have a little bit of guilt. And that guilt, listen, with him, I have that guilt because I saw that stuff and I was proactive, but I wasn't proactive enough.
Right.
Since then, there was a friend of mine that was, he was hitting it hard. Like he was hitting it hard where his kids were noticing, his wife was noticing, and I didn't even hear it firsthand. I heard it secondhand through my wife. And I remember I called him up and my wife was real scared about me calling him. Oh no, his wife is going to be mad at me. And I was like, I don't give a shit. I know about this now and I cannot let this go. So I call him up. I go, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing? In my way of thinking now is I'd rather have that guy hate me forever if he has just an ounce of self-realization saying, hey, people are noticing, let me back it off. Now, if he chooses to ignore me, I'd rather have him not talk to me anymore.
Right.
If he chooses that, now this one guy has chose not to talk to me anymore, but at least he's better. At least he's better. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'd rather lose you as a friend and you be alive to be all that. So I'm okay with that stuff. But I recently had, getting back to the whole thing with holding grudges against officers, I recently had an interaction with the police officers. It was not a good interaction. They treated me very fairly. They did their job. They did a tough job too. Yeah. I was in their position once or twice and I've never forgot it. And I know they'll never forget it. But the first thing I did in the morning, I text, because I have all their numbers. I texted all of them and I said, hey, listen, I'm sorry you got put in that position last night. I apologize. You did a great job. I text their police chief. I said, these three officers did a fantastic job. They did the best in a tough situation. And I just want you to know that. I don't bear any like there is really no ill will because they never put me in handcuffs. Mm-hmm. They could have. Thank God they didn't because my shoulder probably would have popped out, which would have been the worst thing in the world. So the last time you were in, you were going for your master's degree.
Correct.
The key component to any law enforcement officer being the best version of themselves is through education. Sherry Alsop is a leader in providing that education to police agencies, preparing them for the all too frequent dealings with sexual assault victims.
You've seen Sherry on episode 169 of the Suffering Podcast. She survived incest and almost daily sexual assault, so she comes from a place of experience and true understanding.
Sherry has the intelligence, commitment, and compassion to open the eyes of those on the front lines, while providing the tools to effectively deal with a difficult situation. Sherry's instruction comes from experience and multiple certifications.
Training with Sherry will offer on-site training, customized schedules, specialized instruction, tailored from a victim's perspective.
You are going to hear Sherry's heart-wrenching but inspiring survivor story. Learn proprietary trauma-informed training techniques. uncovered victim-centered interview methods while earning continuing education credits according to your state guidelines. To be the best, you must learn from the best. Let Sherry also guide you through the delicate cases of sexual assault from a victim's point of view.
Be a source of comfort to those victims affected by these traumatic experiences while producing a solid investigation and uncovering details that often go unnoticed.
To find out more or to contact Sherry Alsop, go to sherryalsop.com. That's SherryAllsup.com. What draws you to therapy? Like what? I know you've been involved with Reps for Responders, and I know you see the peer support side of it. So, but what draws you to the whole therapy field?
So it worked for me. So after I went through all my stuff, I realized like I need help now, right? Like I knew I was going to lose my job. I didn't realize how bad it was going to be, but I knew my job was gone. And that was the only thing I essentially wanted to lose. I wanted to keep the rest of my life intact as much as possible. In order to do that, I needed to start working on myself. So I reached out to a therapist and I saw her for a few times and she sucked. I didn't like her, honestly. Like,
see, not all therapists are good, or they're just not a good fit.
It's not a good fit, right? So I went about a month, 3 weeks maybe without seeing a therapist. And I'm like, you know what? I want to try this again. So I talked to some people and I got hooked up with a therapist by the name of Rachel Kornblit. She's my therapist still to this day. And I started seeing her and she just did a really good job in helping me get my life back together again. So as I'm going through this, I start realizing, and as I start like working on myself and getting involved with different things in like the mental health, law enforcement world, I start realizing that it's not very easy for cops, first responders, veterans to find a therapist that quote unquote gets it, right?
Because we're a different animal.
You are a different animal and you have to understand that. And I've even spoken to some therapists in the field and they're like, no, people are people. And I'm like, no, I'm like, it is different. Like it is a different beast. It's a different animal. And if you were to sit in front of a first responder or cop and say that, you're never going to have a rapport with them. You have to understand that things are different in that field, in that line of work. Not many people go to work understanding that they might not come home.
What it does is it allows them to be able, the cops are real good at justifying their actions, no matter how bad their activities are.
Absolutely.
We are so good at it. If a cop visited prostitutes every night, he's going to say, hey, well, listen, I don't want to drag anybody into my life because it's a tough life. And they're great at just justifying it. So that's one aspect of it. It's the trust issue. You know, my therapist is a retired cop. Okay. And Anna Peisch that was in here, that's airing the week we were recording this.
Yep.
Her husband's a cop. Well, she gets it. She understands it. Dr. Stefanelli has treated nothing but cops for the last 50 years. And we gravitate towards these people because I know you said the first therapist wasn't good. I know what a bad therapist is. I've had him. Him and I had the same therapist when we were first in our shootings, and that guy's lucky he's still alive. Like, that's how bad it is.
Yeah.
And there's a slew of those people. Not everybody is suited to treat cops. Go treat the housewives, go treat, you know, the guy, the office worker, the guy who goes to work in a suit and tie every day. Go treat them, and I'm sure you're going to do fine.
Yep.
But we're thick-headed.
It's a different animal. It is. So I realized that and I said, well, hold up. Like, I've been there. So I used to be a cop. I understand this world. I also have my fair share of substance abuse issues in the past. Common issue in law enforcement, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I say, why not now become a really good resource for people? Why don't I become the person that I needed when I was going through everything?
We're all addicted to something. Every cop is addicted to something.
Whether it be adrenaline, booze, women, like anything, gambling, you know, anything, fitness.
Yep.
You know, anything. There is an addiction out there. It's the type of personality that field draws.
Yeah, it's a scary thing because you don't start out that way. No, it was put to me when I went to rehab. Alcoholics do not become cops. Cops become alcoholics. And it was a very true statement.
I can't remember the exact like numbers or study, but essentially they took like a pre-test of cops before they graduated the academy. They go through the academy. A couple of years later, they go back to them and they basically see like what percentage of them now can qualify for like an alcohol use disorder. The number is alarming.
Yeah, I because it's easy, it's free. And now they can smoke weed, which I don't understand. I don't get it. It's better than alcohol, I will say that. It's better than alcohol, but it's still not good because it's masking something.
Right.
So do you have any experience with that, with the police officers smoking weed? Do you know, like, as far as an addiction pattern?
As far as addiction pattern, no. Do I know cops that use marijuana? Absolutely. The ones that I know, from what they tell me, they're using it the right way. I will say that. Like, there are scientific, like, evidence that say, like, it can help treat, anxiety, and sleep issues, whatever. That's how they say they're using it. Do I think that's better than going home and pouring a glass of Jameson every night? Personally, me, yeah. I think having a gummy to help yourself relax at the end of the day is better. I will always say, though, that there are healthier ways than a foreign substance to deal with those things, right? But I think in terms of, like, the lesser of the two evils, I would lean towards marijuana personally.
Because nobody ODs on marijuana.
No, nobody's ODing on marijuana. For the most part, they're just taking a gummy, whatever, smoking, and going to bed. Whereas my experience personally, like, I was having a glass of Jameson, but one glass didn't turn to one, and then I went to bed. One glass turned to 2 to 3 to staying out. You know what I mean? Like, there's a more of a trickle-down effect with the alcohol than what I would assume is marijuana.
And also what it does to your body is crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Now, I know there's certain strains of marijuana that can help out with fitness and stuff. I don't really buy it all that much.
I won't co-sign the weed thing. You know what I mean?
Neither will
it's
I.
not something I would do. It's not something that I'll co-sign anybody doing. If you want to do it, by all means, have at it. Do I think the lesser of the two evils is marijuana? I do. Again, like I said, though, I think there are better ways to deal with what you're going through than with a foreign substance.
It's still, my problem is with it is it's still masking an issue. It's not solving anything. It's not curing anything.
Mm-mm.
And it's putting a foreign substance in your body that you really don't need, per se.
Yeah.
Where there's other much healthier ways to do it.
Yep.
Listen, there's a litany of things I could give people that will promote health. And I know from watching your Instagram, I know you do a lot of your stuff in the gym.
Yeah.
Heavily into the fitness industry. And then for me, like, that's what sort of calms me down, or a cold plunge or meditation or something like that. Something that I can work the body naturally to heal.
Yeah.
So I'm not a big fan of it. I just think, you're introducing a different species of dragon into the castle. That's the way I look at it.
I'll say this. So when it comes to, like, ways to cope with things, obviously, yeah, we're talking about alcohol and marijuana as a way to cope with something. That's mainly why people are using those substances. There's 5 other things that you can do. And these are, like, 5 things that we practice as first responders. Fitness, nutrition, cut your booze or drugs down. Well, obviously, just don't do drugs. Cut or eliminate your booze. Some type of therapeutic modality, whether it be actual therapy, self-help groups, meditation, cold plunge, sauna, acupuncture, something.
Running,
and social connection. If you do these 5 things and you practice these 5 things religiously, I guarantee you, whatever you're masking with a foreign substance, you'll be able to cope with by doing those 5 things.
The funny thing is about people with any type of addiction. Here's what I found. So addiction, or some sort of brokenness in their life, where sometimes they would deal with alcohol or something. When they get through it, they are and those are the people that I surround myself with, because I said it on Instagram Live. Those are the people, and you included in this. They will give you the shirt off their back if that's their only shirt, and even though they're broken.
Yeah.
Like, they're willing to reach out. Those are the people that I want in my life. I don't want the person who has a holier than thou attitude, like the officers and I'm trying not to shit on any officers, but the officers around you who noticed something was going bad and said, he ruined his life. How many officers, maybe not to your face, but how many officers said that about you when you went through your times?
Oh my God.
Oh my God, he ruined his life. What an asshole.
I mean, to put it in perspective, like, do you know how many cops I still talk to who I used to work with? 2.
Yeah, I don't talk to any.
2 of them were my best. One was my best friend before I was even a cop, and we just happened to work together. And the other one was just, like, a true friend who legitimately just wanted to see the best for me after everything, who we're still friends with and we still hang out. 2 people out of everybody I worked with.
So I don't talk to anybody from my old department, because they couldn't understand what I was going through. They just didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember guys who retired on either an injury or something, and I was that guy. I'm telling you right now, I was that guy. Like, he's full of shit.
Mhm.
Like I was that guy.
Yeah.
And once the tide was turned, I'm like, oh man, I'm a dick, man. I shouldn't have done that. Like I never sought them out to call them that.
Right.
But there's always whispers.
Right.
So when you going through your master's degree, and this is the avenue that you want to take, what kind of certifications? Like, I'm sure you had to do your research. What kind of certifications do you even need? I don't even know. I know a lot of therapists, and I couldn't tell you what certifications they need.
So I had to have a bachelor's degree, right? Obviously, I didn't have to have any prerequisites to get into the master's program that I was in. It was basically just, give us your transcripts or whatever, and we'll see if you qualify to get into the program. I'm lucky. My bachelor GPA was awful. But when I was working, I was going to grad school for like justice administration. So I had like a 4.0 with like 4 classes in grad school already. So that probably helped me get into my program. And that was, I was able to get into my program just with the bachelor's degree and some grad school credits. And that's essentially all I needed. Now, once I graduated the program, I was set up to take the NCE, which is the National Counseling Exam, which is the exam that I needed to pass in order to get my license to practice mental health. So I graduated in May. I took the month of January, February, March, April, May. I took all of May and half of June to cram for my test. And I remember telling everybody who I could possibly tell, I'm going to go and I'm going to pass my exam on the first try. I'm like huge into like, you speak it into existence, positive affirmations, manifest the hell out of things that you want to happen, and they'll happen. And that's what I did. I told every single person I possibly could, I'm going to go take my exam. I'm going to pass it on the first try. And what happened? I went and I took my exam and I passed it on the first try.
So there's reality to that.
Yeah.
Speak it into existence and it will happen. And I'll tell you why. So in 2024, I did a lot of traveling. I went all over the country. One of the places that I didn't have booked was LA. I said, I'll be going to LA. And I would actively tell people that. Don't you know, in the end of August, I went to LA.
Yeah.
I went to LA. And there was no reason, there was no rhyme for it, but it happened. So you can call bullshit on it. You can call, it happened.
And this is not like a toot my own horn, like cocky thing. This is I wanted something to happen. I needed it to happen so I could start my career now. And I just believe if I'm not going to be confident in myself, who else is going to believe in me if I don't believe in myself?
Now, your wife, when did you get married? Did you get married after?
I got married 2 weeks before I got arrested.
Oh, man, you want to talk about bad timing.
My marriage did not start off the best possible way, no.
So now you're out of a job. You tell your wife that you're going to start this new career. Now you got to pay for graduate school. And what people don't realize is graduate school is like twice as expensive as undergraduate. Credits cost more. How the hell did you work this? You're a newly married couple. How did you pay for it? Did you pay for it with grants?
I got loans. I bit the bullet and I had to take out loans. I had to do what I had to do.
Yeah.
I'll probably pay these grad school loans back by the time I'm dead. But, it is what it is.
That's what did it for me. That's where all my student loan debt came from was grad school.
Yeah.
Undergrad was pretty easy. It was pretty easy to pay for. But when I got into graduate and I started going through a doctorate program, man, it just racked up. And then, I was paying so little. I'm like, I'm never paying this shit off.
Yeah. But I had a vision of what I wanted to do, and I was willing to do anything to make it happen. I was able to take some money and pay for some credits just so I didn't have the whole thing on a loan. But for the most part, it was loans, and it is what it is.
So your wife, what was her reaction when you said this is the avenue I want to go?
She was happy because the alternative was to go work for the Iron Workers Union. The same time I got into grad school, I got into the Iron Workers Union.
That's right. You said that last time.
Yeah. So she liked the idea better of me sitting in a classroom for a little bit, giving therapy 101 in an office versus climbing, hundreds of feet up in the air, hanging on by a thread.
In any weather.
In any weather.
It's going to be 100 degrees or it's going to be 10, and you're up there.
Yeah.
I'm actually picturing it would be a little bit more of a hard sell. No. But she saw you sort of dig yourself out of this self-imposed hole.
Yeah.
She's got to be a little bit proud of that.
Yeah. Look, I say it all the time. She was a rock through it. You know what I mean? You can say I'll be with you through anything. Those are just words. Actions speak a little bit louder. And I'm not going to, was it easy? No. Like, are things always perfect? No. Like, I did a lot of, in the whole, what I got myself into caused a lot of damage, in multiple aspects of my life. And I'm still repairing some of this, right? Like, things don't just get fixed overnight. It does take a lot of time, because the ripple down effect of me losing my job isn't just like I have to find a new job, finances.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You
Like,
got to support a family.
you're supporting a family. I lost my pension. Like, I would have been making the money I make now. Like, I would have been making way more had I kept my job as a cop. You know what I mean? It's like the ripple down effect was tough, and it's still like, still going through it, obviously. But yes, in everything, she was a rock. She stood by me. I will give it to her to this day. She's never thrown it in my face once.
So you have 2 young children.
Yeah.
Are you worried about, we had that first question about legacy. There is a chance where one day your children are going to find this out. There's a good chance. How are you going to have you thought about how you're going to approach that?
They're going to hear it from me. When I feel like they're at the right age, I'll most likely, I've thought about this, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I'll mostly pull up a picture of me in uniform and pull up an article and, say daddy made some bad decisions, and daddy paid a price, and daddy paid the consequences, because all actions, there's consequences to your actions. And, don't be afraid to ever, if you feel like you need help, don't be afraid to ask for help. That's essentially the message that I'm going to drive to my kids when I go through and I tell them what happened to their dad.
So there's consequences to every action, both good and bad. I recently just heard this story, and it really hit home for me. Kid at school, some kids were picking on his sister. We're talking middle school, picking on his sister, and he punched a kid in the face for picking on his sister, right? So school calls the father. Father comes in, listens to it, says, okay. He's suspended for 4 days, comes home, and his son was kind of mad at him. And he's like, Dad, I was sticking up for my sister. And he goes, yes, and you did the right thing. And he goes, well, if I did the right thing, how come you didn't stick up for me? He goes, because every action, either good or bad, has a consequence. And now you got to deal with the consequence. Most of the time in this world, good things that you do have tougher consequences than the bad things that you do. Take your master's degree. You're in the hole financially a lot.
I'll say that 650.
650,000.
50 grand.
Oh, 50 grand.
650. I hope no grad school costs that much.
I was going to say, where'd you go?
I'm in the hole in loans, 50 grand.
All right, 50 grand. So you're in the hole. You're starting your career at a deficit. That's a consequence. And you're doing something good.
Yeah.
So it's a good lesson to teach kids.
Yeah.
Just because you did the right thing doesn't mean that you're going to get off consequence free.
Nope.
Or you're going to get the cheers and the banners and the parade. It doesn't work like that.
No.
Doing the right thing for the right thing's sake. You've chosen to take that. Now, when you finally graduated, and have you had a chance to do actual therapy work yet?
Doing it now.
You're doing it.
I love it. I got started while I was in school, in my internship. So I did an 800-hour internship with a nonprofit agency in Patterson, where I was doing mental health therapy, and that's essentially where I work now full time.
You're sitting in front of your first patient, and God, it's got to be like walking backwards. It really does. I'm very interested. Whenever I have somebody in the therapy field in here, or a therapist, I'm always very interested. What was it like sitting in front of that first patient? Like, did you know that this is the avenue that you wanted to go, or is like, man, I don't know.
When I was done with the first session, it was because of the reaction that I got from my first client. They said to me, this was the best first session I'd ever had. In the agency that I work for, clients get passed around a lot sometimes. People they come and go, right? There's a revolving door. So sometimes clients will have multiple counselors, therapists, whatever you want to call it. When they were like, wow, this was like one of the best first sessions I've ever had, I was like, I can do this.
So the difference between like what you do for reps for responders, where you're talking to other police officers, versus here when you're in a clinical setting and you're a professional, the game goes up.
Yeah.
If you tell a guy in reps for responders, well, you're a fucking idiot, there's no consequences. You do that in a therapy session.
So there's definitely like a professional hat that I have to put on. That said, there are times where meeting clients where they are is more beneficial than putting on like my clinical hat and using big words that they're not going to understand. Me personally, I found, speaking with this population that I work with now, if you talk to people like they're humans, you're more likely to build that rapport with them quicker versus me throwing big clinical words at them and talking to them like they're not, like I'm trying to prove something. Like I went to school and, oh, I know XYZ because I was in school, right? That to me is not like the best way to build a rapport with my clients, at least, right? Everybody's different, obviously. But that's the approach that I take is I try and be me, but the most professional me that I can be, if that makes sense.
I'm sitting in therapy with Dr. Stefanelli, and I said something that I was doing something, and I said, I don't know why I did that. And he looked at me, I swear, and this is where, the connection was made, because it was me. And he goes, it's because you're fucked up, right? And I was like, wow. I had been in therapy before then, and I never heard of a therapist saying that to somebody, but it was so real to me.
Yeah.
Okay, you're a human being now. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And I think that's what builds that connection.
For sure.
Have you had one that didn't work out so well?
There's clients that like I don't mesh with, right? Where like that rapport just isn't there. Part of that is because like rapport building takes time. To really build like a good therapeutic rapport with somebody takes way longer than what I have with my clients right now. Typically only have my clients for like, on average right now, 3 months. Okay. Which is not a lot of time to really, again, like build that therapeutic rapport with them. Now, am I able to just like get a baseline rapport with them and, yes, where we can do some work? Sure, absolutely. Have I had anybody, to go back to your question, where like we just haven't been able to click at all? Knock on wood. No.
Well, that's good because it shows your adaptability.
Yeah.
One of the things, and again, I have to say it's got something to do with your involvement in Reps for Responders and your emotional awareness there's nobody that's perfect. Because when you wear a cop, you think you're invincible and I'm above everything and I'm never going to get in trouble. And then when you get knocked down a peg or two, you realize, oh, I'm not that. I'm not. I'm a human being.
Yeah.
And once you get to that point, because I think a lot of therapists, as they move on, it becomes kind of rote to them.
Right.
Where it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to talk to the 700th person that's depressed. Oh, well, okay. Well, tell me what you did. Okay.
Right.
And you see that, what was that? Something About Mary. All right. Did you ever see? So he's sitting in therapy and the therapist made him face his back towards me and he goes out and gets something to eat and comes back. Oh, it's like, oh, that's interesting. And he's wiping his mouth and stuff. It becomes very rote and there's no connection that's made.
Right.
And there's no value either. You're just going through the motions.
Yeah.
The Suffering Podcast welcomes our newest sponsor, Keto Revive. Ketamine infusions that are personalized, accessible, and holistic. Proven treatments for post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, chronic pain, neuropathic pain, and so much more. Keto Revive is physician-operated with customized treatments tailored to you and an outstanding support system. Keto Revive offers first responder special discounts. So try something new, proven treatments, located in Wyckoff, New Jersey. To find out more, visit Keto Revive at ketorevive.com. Let's start healing today. What's your specialty? What do you hope to do?
Trauma, substance abuse, first responders.
Yeah.
Like I said, like I want to be the person that I needed. And in order to do that.
That's interesting. You want to be the person that you needed.
Yeah.
Think about that. That takes a lot of mental maturity in order to say that.
It takes a lot of hours crying too about what you did in the past to get over it.
Yeah.
First responders, trauma, substance abuse, like give me that. Like that is what I want. Private practice. Right now I'm an licensed associate counselor. I'm an LAC. So I need to collect about 2.5 years worth of clinical hours until I'm fully licensed. Once I'm fully licensed as an LPC, licensed professional counselor, I can have my own practice and I can hit the ground running. While I'm collecting my hours, this is when I really start to plan on diving into like the specialties, you know, the EMDR, which, you know, we just brought up, you know, there's an episode right now dropping about EMDR. I want that. It's effective. It works. I want to know how to do that because it helps this population that I want to work with.
Have you ever done it?
I couldn't do it. Like just my brain like could not focus enough to do it.
So here's what it did for me, and here's what it's did for people who have seen benefit to it. It's not immediate. It's and we're all in this world of instant gratification, but it's not instant at all. So what happens is you'll think about some past trauma that would normally make you anxious or just get you all riled up. You'll think about it, but you're like, huh. Well, it puts that in part of your brain that allows you to deal with it.
Yeah.
It's a defragmenter for the brain. That's the best definition I can give for it.
Yeah.
And with first responders in general, and Anna said this. She said, you know, we're taught to suppress our emotions.
Right.
You know, we go to a call where somebody blew their head off, or you know, a husband beat the shit out of his wife, and she's in bad shape, and we got to go on to the next call.
Stuff it down,
and then we start doing that at home, and that's where stuff starts getting really unhealthy.
Yeah,
and we're used to this stuff, so our trauma is put in a place in our brain where we cannot process it, and eventually it does. We throw it up.
Yeah,
we throw it up. Have you had anybody really tell you something without giving specifics? Obviously, have you anybody giving you something where you go like, wow, that's pretty fucking bad?
I will say this. Where I work when I was a cop, I was doing warrants. I was doing drug court warrants. And I always thought people like had a choice. Like you made a choice to put yourself in this bad situation where where you started doing hard drugs and you lost everything. Yes, everybody has a choice. However, there are some people that do not have a chance from the start, and life is they're already starting behind, in the race.
It's 2.5 strikes against them. I've seen it.
It is. I'll give a story. Picture a 9-year-old getting shot up with heroin and being pimped out by her family.
Wow.
You tell me what kind of chance she has at a normal life. For her to be alive now is insane. For her to be drug-free right now is insane. It's taught me that, again, not everybody makes this choice. Because I used to think it was a choice. I used to think, just get up, go to work, stop doing drugs. What are you doing, right? Like, I did drugs and I functioned. You know what I mean? Like, why can't you just do this? And some of the things that I've heard, I'm like, you know what? That's not the case, man. Like, some people, they just have a rough start. And their climb is like incredibly hard than most other people's.
I am grateful for a lot of things in my life. I have a roof over my head. I have food in my belly. I have money in my wallet. And with those things, I know they're very basic things. You got to understand, not everybody's got that.
No.
Not everybody has that stuff. And I saw it, there's been times I pulled over cars that were all jacked up, there's everything wrong with the car possible. And you see in the back seat, there's 4 kids, 3 of them aren't of the same parent. They're dirty. They're not in car seats. They're all under the age of 5. And you're looking at these kids, parents are all whacked out. And you look at these kids, you're like, man, you don't even have a chance.
Oh.
And your heart bleeds for that. And until you see that firsthand, you don't understand it.
No.
The world is not sunshine and rainbows for most of the country.
I remember talking to some of my friends and I was like, you guys are going to think I'm soft now, but like this drug addiction, like this is real. Like this is not a choice people make, man. Like they don't wake up like wishing for this life. Like they are behind in the race, like I said, from the start. And their climb is uphill and it's really hard. And this is not something that they want to do.
Now, I will say this. Those people who were born in that shitty situation, a certain percentage of them is going to make it out.
Mm-hmm.
When they do make it out, I will say this. They are at an advantage where before they were disadvantaged. They are at an advantage if they learn how to use all that stuff.
Right.
I'm a big proponent if you use your suffering like you did. If you use your suffering and you flip it around and you change that word and you use it for good, you have an advantage that very few people have. So if you wanted to get in this field of therapy, never having gone through any addiction, never having lost your job, never having done any of this stuff, you would be a less effective therapist.
100%.
So think about that. You had to go through, you were in the spot that you were supposed to be. You had to go through all that stuff in order to get to where you are now.
I'm a full-blown believer now. Like, I used to think all this stuff was corny, but like legitimately, everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to know the reason why it's happening in the moment. I didn't know why I got caught doing what I was doing in the moment. Now I do. It was to put me on this path so I can help people.
Now, how do you view the prosecutors, knowing that, what you just said, how do you view the prosecutors and the investigating officers where I'm sure initially when it happened, you held some ill will to him, even though you didn't hate him, you might have held a little ill will towards him. How do you look at him now, knowing that you're right where you're supposed to be?
Everybody's got a job to do. You know, if you do your job, things will end up the way they're supposed to be.
So in my eyes, those people were angels to you.
Yeah.
They were angels to you, and they facilitated your life's purpose.
The change.
Yeah. Because without them, just think about that. Think about if you were left to your own devices, if things were able to continue and you were never under investigation and you're still a sheriff's officer.
I wouldn't be. I know I wouldn't be.
You may have been dead.
Yeah. Or somebody else would have been dead.
Yeah. You may have been sitting in a jail cell. You may have lost your life in a drunk driving accident. You may not be married. You may not have your kids. You definitely wouldn't be in this profession.
No.
So all these little things, and if you believe in providence at all these little things had to fall into place like a Tetris block for you to get here.
Yep.
And that is, if you think that if you think shit's by chance, it just doesn't happen.
Right.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen.
And, it's given me the opportunity to be surrounded by a bunch of really good people, both in the field of therapy and in the field of like the mental health first responder world. Like my supervisors right now who are supervising me, they're all aces, and I'm learning so much from them, and I'm lucky to be with them. I'm not with them. I don't have the opportunity to learn from them if I don't go through what I go through, right?
So those people, are any of them first responders or former first responders?
No, but
They're looking at you like a gold mine, my friend, because we need help.
so it's actually funny. So my supervisor right now, I've inspired her to get into the first responder world, and she wants to understand this world because she sees the problem now and she wants to be part of the solution. This is probably actually one of the coolest, like, inspiring things that I've done is like to take somebody in this field who didn't have an interest in first responders, sees what I went through, sees what I'm doing now, and say, I want to be part of the solution now in the professional field. Like, that to me is really cool. I've inspired other people to get sober. Other people have gone back to school in the field because they've seen what I go through. But to have somebody already in the field say, wow, there's a problem there and I want to be part of the solution now. I want to start getting educated on some of the things that first responders go through so I can help them. That to me is like really cool.
See, to me, you're very valuable. If I was looking at you from a strictly, forget about knowledge, from a strictly business perspective, you are ultra valuable because you have one foot in the door with first responders.
Yeah.
All right. First responders have great insurance. Now, again, take your personality away from it and look at it from a CEO's perspective. Mm-hmm. You have your foot in the door. First responders have great insurance, and there's a couple things first responders need. We need lawyers and we need therapists.
Yep.
And it's like going to college to be a funeral director. You're always going to have dead people.
Yeah.
And in police world, you're always going to need therapy.
Yep.
And it's at the right time, too. So you hit it at the butter zone, too. Don't forget. It's finally
Shifting.
Yeah. I mean, it took long enough. Enough people had to die in order to do it.
Yeah.
So I know you're working for some people right now.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us? Because, listen, I am all in on the stuff that you're doing. So you said they're helping you out a lot. Who are they?
You got time for this?
Of course.
A bunch right now. So in the private world that I work for, there's two people right now that I'm working for. There's two separate like private practices. The first one is Zen Warrior out of Mattawan, strictly first responders, veterans. We do telehealth. I've got a few clients there who I see privately, and this is my first opportunity to work with the first responder veteran population in a therapeutic setting. I put this off for a little bit because I wanted to start with Gem Pop first, but now I'm like, all right, like I want to get into like what I'm doing now. And I had met Michelle, who is the owner of the practice, through a mutual friend, Brian Gillespie, who works at RCA, Recovery Center of America, who have their own first responder veteran program. So we connected. She asked if I wanted to work. I said, yes, sure, absolutely. So I see a couple clients through them. And then when I spoke about my supervisor, who I've kind of inspired a little bit, her name is Michelle. Also, a ton of Michelles in my life right now when it comes to therapy. She has a private practice called Guiding Hope Counseling. So I'm also coming on board with her to see clients for mental health and addiction as well. So those are like the two private practices that I'm working for, Guiding Hope and Zen Warrior. In addition to that, I work with Reps for Responders, a nonprofit agency whose initially our goal, is to improve the physical and emotional survivability skills of first responders so they can make better decisions on the job and off the job, with the ultimate goal to reduce the suicide rate in the veteran and first responder community.
Greatest therapy session in the world is have a workout partner that's of the similar mind than you.
Working out can be a great therapy.
Yeah. But working out with a partner, you get a lot of shit off your chest when you're working hard.
Those are some of the best therapy sessions I've ever had. And some of them, we don't even talk.
Yeah.
We just get after it. But just being around people who are like motivated, who just you click with, you both go in there with a goal, whether it be a few people, like those soup to nuts, some of the best ones ever.
So this is how I bring both of my kids to the gym. I have my 12-year-old and my 15-year-old. My 12-year-old has got discipline that I wish I had at 12 years old, because he's up at 4:45 every morning to be at the gym at 5 o'clock with me every day. My 15-year-old, he's a teenager. He likes to go on his own time, but we go on a Saturday. And that is some of the best father-son time, which is essentially therapy.
Yeah.
All right. That is some of the best father-son time, because I don't allow them to have their phones. Their phones are away. I have their full attention. We're both working towards a goal. If something needs to come out, it comes out, and we work through it in between sets.
Yeah.
So for those people who, if you're looking to partner up with somebody, get into some good shape, Reps for Responders, I'm all in on Reps for Responders. I had Frank on, God, I was still on audio when I had Frank on.
Yeah. I believe in what we do. Like, we do freaking really good work. We've saved lives, and we're going to continue to do it. And 2025 is going to be a really, really big year for us.
Yeah. You got anything new coming up with them?
So we do. So we've partnered with a guy named Nick Ricciotti, who is an active Green Beret, who is a single leg amputee. He's got one leg. He got blown up overseas. He rehabbed himself to get back to Green Beret status, and he's now active with one leg. He's an absolute unit of a person, right? He owns a company called Team Machine and Precision Components, where Frank and I, Reps for Responders, are now part of his training company. So he's actually going to be coming out in April. Frank and I are going to be presenting with him and a couple other people from his team on a training for leadership up at the Bergen County Police Academy.
Very nice.
So super looking forward to that. And
Brad get you in there?
Of course, Brad got us in there. Of course, Brad's going to be there. And we have a couple other big events planned. One called Fit for Duty in May, where it's a workout ran by a guy named Mike Coonahan, who's a First Form athlete, First Form Supplement Company. And it's essentially just a giant workout for the community, for first responders to get together. We do it at a restaurant. They do a brunch. It's right on the Hudson, right next to one of the bridges out there. It's an amazing time. Those are like my two favorite events of 2025. And we're looking just to get into more departments. Like, what we do is so valuable at Reps. Like, it needs to be in departments. Like,
oh yeah,
guys need to know what we do and what we offer, because like I said, we have the ability to save lives. We do it. We're a third party entity. Like, we're not connected to the state or the PBA or department. Like, we have resources that you can use where nobody needs to know about it.
Well, so you got to also realize, when you were drinking your heaviest, were you working out?
Yeah.
You were still working out.
Yeah.
I see. There's two ways people look at it. It's either you allow your bad behavior because you work so hard, or you abstain from your bad behavior because you're working so hard. So there's two different mindsets of how to look at it. From now, I know for me, I got, November 26th, I have 11 years. And I know I could fall off real easy.
Yeah.
but I'm happy where I am. And I do it I stay on the straight and narrow in spite of it because I know it's going to hurt me. I know what those hangovers feel like, and I don't want to feel that way no more. And I know the path that it's going to take me.
Yeah.
So I stay sober in spite of all those things.
Yep.
And the great thing too is because if I'm out where people are drinking, I'm like, I got to go work out in the morning. Well, it keeps me away from a lot of stuff.
Sure.
When I see people drinking but so that's something you got to also understand too with cops drinking. If you're not drinking, and I think Mike said this the last time you were in here, they're going to look at you funny if you're not drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not.
Do you have a problem?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you? You're not drinking?
You're not drinking.
You have a problem, don't you?
Yeah, and the reason they do that is because if you're not drinking, it kind of tells them something about themselves. Like, well, this guy's able to hang out sober. What the fuck's wrong with me? And that's the last thing a cop wants to see.
Yeah.
So anybody else besides Reps for Responders and Frank?
I just want to make sure like people get credit here because again, like some people like turn their backs and it is what it is, right? But like people who like stuck by, who like support, obviously like my wife, like you said, stuck by, supported. Frank has been like a big brother to me through all of this. And you need people in your life like Frank because Frank will call me out on my bullshit too. When it needs to be done, when I need to be when actions need to be corrected, right? He's supportive. He believes in me. He motivates me. And to be honest with you, my supervisor, Michelle, right now, who I work under, I've learned a ton from her about therapy. To me, one of the biggest things that you need to have in therapy is empathy. And I didn't really have that to start. And she was able to teach me empathy, which in turn is making me a really good therapist. So I'm just, like you said, everything happens for a reason. I'm very fortunate that all this happened because the stars have aligned for me where I have a really good crew of people around me who believe in me. And it's all right, I can do this. Because there's times where I'm I get down on myself. You know what I mean? There's time, you can't stay positive forever. But I have these people who are no, you can do this. Don't stop. You got this. Keep going. And I'm just
you're
okay.
Definitely on the right path.
Yeah.
But so the funny thing is cops, active cops. So you say empathy. Active cops, especially ones who are jaded or have some sort of addiction problem, have another word for empathy. It's pussy.
I was just going to do that.
It's pussy.
I know.
It's crazy. So think about that. That's a crazy concept.
Remember I told you I went up to my friends and I said, you're going to think I'm soft?
Yep.
This is what I'm talking about. I learned what empathy was.
Yeah. Empathy for yourself more than anything else. Knowing that you made some mistakes and you're owning them. You never every time I've talked to you, even way back when, and one of the crazy things about Nick and I is I think the first time we met was at the Blue Magazine's Moment of Silence retreat, mental health retreat, all the way up in God's country in Newton or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's the first time I met Anna Peisch. Mm-hmm. So it all kind of, and David Clark was there, and it was really, really a good event. And I'm grateful I did meet you. Now, Nick, we are coming to the end of this thing here. Same way as last time. This journey that you've been on, the suffering that you've had to be on, listening to other people's problems now, not just talking about your own, that suffering has to teach you something. And what has it taught you?
Again, we're all human. Nobody's invincible. It's okay to ask for help. And just, again, know, things get better when you put the work in. Things are going to be hard to start. There's no doubt. Life is going to kick you and it's going to want to put you down. And there's going to be times where you want to stay down. But if you can tell yourself, I got this, right? And you can put people around you who believe in you, you can do it. You can essentially do anything within within reality that you want to do. You just have to have that mindset that I can do it. I can work through this. I got this. F everybody else who says that I can't. I'm going to do it. Well, watch me.
You said something really important there. You put the right people around you.
Yeah.
When you were drinking, those were not the right people around you because they were drinking with you. They were enabling you.
Yep.
Now you got the right people around you. So somebody once told me that with enough time, money, and support, anything is possible. And I strongly believe that.
And like I said, you have to have that attitude. F you say I can't do that. Watch me.
I like that. Watch me. thank you so much for coming in again.
Love it. Thank
All
you.
right. And listen, I want to get Frank back in here. I want you guys to come back in. We'll do the whole thing on reps for responders because I'm really into what you guys are doing.
Let's do it.
And that's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast, the Suffering of Peer Support with Nick Ricciotti. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned. Felons can vote. Found that one out. I didn't know that. Not all therapists are good. Relating to a person at their place is how you connect. We are all human. Be the person that you needed. That's one of my favorites. Be the person that you needed. But most importantly, put the work in.
There it is.
And that's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to go to popple.com. Put in the code TSP20 for a 20% discount on your digital business card. Follow us on all social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, X, OnlyFans. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson. Of course, follow the Suffering Podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.